The blaring of proximity alarms jolted Captain Sarah Chen from her meditation. Her dark eyes snapped open as the bridge of the UES Defiance thrummed with nervous energy. The experimental warship hung in the shadows of an asteroid belt, running silent as they tracked their prey. Contact bearing 320, Lieutenant Rivera reported from Tactical, her fingers dancing across holographic controls that seemed almost primitive compared to standard Galactic Alliance technology. Energy signature matches the raiders that hit Proxima Colony. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. For 6 months, these mysterious attackers had been striking Alliance worlds with impunity, their advanced shields shrugging off the most sophisticated energy weapons like they were nothing. The Alliance Council had been helpless, their mighty fleets reduced to watching as colonies burned. But the Defiance was different. When the raids began, Sarah had convinced a small group of human admirals to greenlight her controversial project. A warship that deliberately ignored 3 centuries of Alliance technological progress. All hands to battle stations, Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the anticipation building in her chest. Power up the kinetic batteries. Load the mass drivers with tungsten penetrators. Her crew, all human volunteers who believed in her vision, responded with practiced efficiency. The Defiance's systems were considered obsolete by Alliance standards. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no quantum computers. Instead, they relied on layered armor plating, rail guns, and analog backup systems that could survive any electronic warfare. The enemy vessels emerged from FTL like ghostly predators, sleek shapes of crystal and light that seemed to bend reality around them. Their sensors would detect the Defiance soon, but Sarah wasn't worried about being spotted anymore. Their shield configurations haven't changed, Commander Jackson reported from engineering. Still optimized against energy weapons. Perfect. Sarah leaned forward in her command chair. Helm. Plot intercept course. Engineering. Divert power to the forward kinetic batteries. Let's remind the galaxy why humanity never completely abandoned the old ways. The raiders detected them too late. As they scrambled to bring their sophisticated shields to bear, the Defiance was already moving, her nuclear-powered engines pushing her through space with raw, brutal force. The enemy opened fire with weapons that could slice through Alliance shields like paper, but the Defiance's thick armor absorbed the hits, layers of ablative plating vaporizing to bleed away the energy. Target locked, Rivera announced. Mass drivers charged. Fire. The Defiance's main guns roared silently in space, launching hypersonic slugs of tungsten that no energy shield could stop. Physics was physics, and 2,000 kilograms of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed cared nothing for advanced technology. The raiders' beautiful shields flared uselessly as the projectiles passed through them, smashing into their crystalline hulls with devastating force. Direct hits. Rivera's voice carried a note of fierce triumph. Enemy vessels showing multiple hull breaches. Their shields are failing to adapt. Sarah watched as the raiders attempted to retreat, their confidence shattered by this encounter with something their sophisticated systems couldn't counter. But the Defiance wasn't finished teaching them about humanity's approach to warfare. Launch missile swarm, she ordered. Let's see how their point defense handles good old-fashioned kinetic kill vehicles. Dozens of missiles streaked from the Defiance's tubes, each one carrying not an energy warhead, but clusters of tungsten flechettes. The raiders' defenses, calibrated for energy weapons, struggled to track the relatively slow projectiles. Those they did hit simply split into more pieces, turning each missile into a shotgun blast of hypersonic shrapnel. In less than 10 minutes, it was over. The raiders' ships hung broken in space, their once elegant forms reduced to twisted wreckage by weapons their designers had considered too primitive to defend against. Secure from battle stations, Sarah ordered. Begin recovery operations. I want salvage teams ready to board those wrecks. Time to find out who our mysterious friends are. As her crew moved to comply, Sarah accessed a secure channel to Alliance Command. The Quantum Entanglement Communicator, one of the few pieces of modern technology they'd kept, connected her directly to Admiral Zhang's office on Earth. "Mission accomplished, sir," she reported. "The primitive approach worked exactly as predicted. Request permission to begin Phase 2. The Admiral's weathered face showed the first real hope she'd seen in months. "Granted, Captain. I'll convene the Joint Chiefs immediately. If the Raiders can't handle old-school kinetic weapons, then it's time to remind the Alliance why humanity maintains what they call obsolete shipyards." Sarah finished. "We're going to need a lot more tungsten." As she ended the transmission, Sarah looked around her bridge, at the analog gauges, the physical switches, the thick armor visible through the reinforced viewports. The Defiance wasn't pretty by modern standards. She was a throwback, a deliberate step backward in technology. But sometimes, she reflected, moving forward meant remembering what worked in the past. The Raiders had learned that lesson today. Soon, the rest of the galaxy would learn it too. The Alliance Council chamber erupted in chaos as Sarah finished her presentation. The massive hologram displaying the Defiance's battle footage floated above them, showing in stark detail how primitive human weapons had torn through the Raiders' defenses. Impossible. The Centaurian ambassador's crystalline form vibrated with agitation. "You deliberately violated every technological restriction in the Alliance Charter." Sarah stood calmly at the podium, her dress uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes favored by most council members. Behind her, Admiral Zhang watched with carefully hidden amusement as the alien representatives struggled to process what they'd seen. "With respect, Ambassador," Sarah replied, "those restrictions were meant to prevent the development of weapons of mass destruction. The Defiance uses simple kinetic weapons, technology that predates humanity's first steps into space. That's precisely the problem." A Rigelian elder waved his tentacles in distress. "You've taken us backward. These weapons are crude, inelegant, barbaric. They're also the only things that have worked against the Raiders," Admiral Zhang cut in. The chamber fell silent. They couldn't argue with results. Captain Chen's success proves what some of us have been saying for years. We've become too dependent on a single technological path. Sarah activated another hologram, this one showing schematics of the Defiance's systems. The Raiders' shields are quantum-locked to defend against energy weapons. They literally can't stop physical projectiles without completely reconfiguring their entire defensive approach. That's why they've been avoiding Earth's defense sphere. They knew our obsolete weapons could hurt them. The Arctusian science minister leaned forward, multiple eyes blinking in sequence. "But the resource cost, the power requirements for these kinetic weapons, are substantial," Sarah acknowledged. "The Defiance's rail guns consume enormous energy. Her armor makes her slower and less maneuverable than modern ships. But she can take hits that would vaporize an Alliance vessel, and she can fight back even if her main power is down. You're suggesting we refit the entire Alliance fleet?" The Centaurian's voice carried equal parts horror and fascination. "No," Sarah's reply surprised them. "We're suggesting a hybrid approach. Keep your energy weapons and quantum shields. They're still incredibly effective against conventional threats, but add kinetic weapons as a backup. Layer physical armor under your energy shields. Install manual controls and analog systems that can't be hacked or jammed." Admiral Zhang stepped forward. "The Raiders aren't the only threat out there. The galaxy is vast, and we've grown complacent. Every major power in history has fallen when they became too reliant on a single type of technology, a single way of thinking." The chamber erupted in discussion again, but Sarah noticed a change in tone. The initial outrage was giving way to genuine consideration. The Arctusian minister was already studying the Defiance's schematics with professional interest. The Rigelian elder's tentacles were moving in patterns that indicated deep thought. "There's something else you should see," Sarah said, activating a final hologram. This one showed the salvage they'd recovered from the Raider vessels. Their technology isn't actually more advanced than ours. It's just optimized differently. They've pushed energy-based systems to their absolute limits, but they've completely neglected physical defense and kinetic warfare. Like a warrior who trains only their right arm, mused the Rigelian. Strong in one area, but ultimately unbalanced. Exactly. Sarah zoomed in on a particular piece of salvage, and we found this in their computer cores. They're not just raiders. They're scouts. There's an entire civilization out there that's developed along the same technological path as the Alliance. They think they've found our weakness, but instead, we found theirs. Admiral Zhang finished. Thanks to humanity's, what did you call it? Our barbaric insistence on maintaining older technology alongside the new. The council chamber was silent now as the implications sank in. Sarah could see the moment when understanding truly hit them. The realization that their drive toward ever more advanced technology had actually left them vulnerable. How long would it take, the Arctusian minister asked slowly, to begin implementing these hybrid systems? Sarah smiled. That's the best part. Every human shipyard in Alliance space has maintained the capability to produce these primitive weapons. We never stopped manufacturing them. We just told you we did. We can begin refits immediately. You deliberately deceived the council. The Centaurian vibrated with renewed agitation. We preferred to think of it as maintaining strategic diversity, Admiral Zhang replied diplomatically. Humanity's gift to the Alliance has always been our adaptability, our unwillingness to completely abandon proven methods just because something newer comes along. As the Council moved into serious discussion of implementation plans, Sarah thought about her crew aboard the Defiance, already preparing to train Alliance personnel in the use of new old weapons. The raiders, whoever they were, had unknowingly done the galaxy a favor. They'd reminded everyone that true advancement didn't always mean abandoning the past. Sometimes, the oldest wisdom was the most valuable of all. The sound of rail gunfire echoed through the retrofitted Alliance training facility as Sarah watched an Arctusian gunner crew struggle with their new weapon system. Their multiple arms gave them an advantage in operating the manual controls, but they were still having trouble grasping the fundamental concepts. You're still thinking in energy weapon terms, Sarah called out, approaching their station. Forget about shield harmonics and phase variations. This is pure physics. Mass times acceleration equals force. Trust your eyes and your instincts. Commander Jackson stood beside her, checking readings on his tablet. They're learning faster than expected, Captain. The Arctusians especially. Turns out having 6 arms is pretty useful for operating manual systems. The facility, once a showcase for the latest in Alliance military technology, now looked more like a museum of human warfare. Rail gun ranges lined one wall, while crews practiced loading physical ammunition and maintaining mechanical systems in other areas. The air smelled of metal and lubricant instead of the usual sterile cleanliness of energy weapons. Report from the shipyards. Lieutenant Rivera approached, holding a datapad. First wave of hybrid refits is complete. 20 Alliance capital ships now equipped with kinetic weapons and layered armor. The Arctusian Science Minister's modifications to the railgun cooling systems are exceeding expectations. Sarah nodded, feeling the surge of pride. The Alliance races had taken to the old technology with surprising enthusiasm once they got past their initial resistance. They'd even started improving on human designs, adding their own innovations to the basic principles. Captain, a young Rigelian technician called out excitedly, his tentacles writhing with joy. We've successfully integrated the manual targeting system with our neural interfaces. Watch. Sarah observed as the Rigelian crew demonstrated their hybrid targeting solution. They'd managed to combine their species' natural ability to process multiple data streams with the simple mechanical reliability of manual targeting. The result was something entirely new, a perfect blend of old and new approaches. Impressive, she acknowledged. But can you still operate it when the neural interface is down? Of course. The lead technician seemed almost offended. That was the first thing you taught us. Always have a backup for your backup. A high-priority alert flashed on Sarah's comm unit. Admiral Zhang's face appeared in a small hologram. "Captain, we need you in command immediately. Our long-range scouts have detected something concerning." Minutes later, Sarah stood with the Admiral and other senior staff, studying a massive tactical display. The raiders' home civilization had finally been located, and it was far larger than anyone had anticipated. "They call themselves the Quantum Ascendancy," Zhang explained, highlighting vast regions of space. "Our analysis of the salvage data was correct. They've pushed energy-based technology to its absolute limits. Their entire civilization is built around it." "How many ships?" Sarah asked, already calculating possibilities. "Thousands. And they're mobilizing. The scout attacks weren't just testing our defenses. They were mapping positions for a full-scale invasion. They consider our primitive technology an offense to their philosophy of technological advancement." Sarah studied the display, noting movement patterns and fleet compositions. "They still don't know about the refits." "No. As far as they know, only Earth's defense sphere has kinetic weapons. They're planning to bypass it entirely, strike at softer Alliance targets first." Zhang's expression was grim. "We have maybe 2 weeks before they launch their main offensive." 2 weeks isn't much time," Sarah mused, "but it might be enough. How many ships can we refit?" "At current pace, maybe 30% of the Alliance fleet. The rest will have to make do with partial upgrades, basic armor and emergency backup systems at least." Sarah turned to watch the training area through the command center's windows. Alliance crews were working alongside human instructors, learning to integrate centuries of forgotten combat wisdom with their advanced technology. They weren't just learning to use weapons, they were learning to think differently, to appreciate the elegance and simplicity. "It'll have to be enough," she decided, "but we need to accelerate the training. No more separate human and Alliance crews. Integrate them completely. Let them learn from each other. That goes against 3 centuries of Alliance military doctrine," Zhang pointed out, though his tone suggested he agreed with her. "Doctrine is what got us into this mess. The Ascendancy thinks they know exactly what they're facing. An Alliance that's forgotten how to fight without their fancy toys. Instead, they're going to face something entirely new." Sarah turned back to the tactical display, her mind already formulating plans. "Have the Defiance ready for deployment in 6 hours. I want to personally oversee the integration of the first joint cruise. When the Ascendancy comes, they're not going to face humans or Alliance races fighting separately. They're going to face a force that combines the best of both." As she left the command center, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come in such a short time. The Alliance had feared humanity's primitive weapons would drag them backward. Instead, they were forging a new path forward, one that respected the wisdom of the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. The Quantum Ascendancy thought they were targeting the Alliance's weakness. They were about to discover its greatest strength. The Defiance's bridge was eerily quiet as Sarah watched the tactical display track the incoming Quantum Ascendancy fleet. Hundreds of crystalline ships moved in perfect formation, their energy signatures overwhelming the sensors. Behind her vessel, the combined human Alliance fleet waited in the shadow of a massive gas giant, their hybrid systems powered down to minimal levels. "They're right on schedule," Commander Jackson reported from his station, where he worked alongside a Rigelian tactical officer. "Main fleet approaching the Arcturus checkpoint. Their course confirms they're bypassing Earth entirely." "Of course they are," Sarah replied, studying the enemy formation. "They think they've got us figured out. Human worlds are too well defended with primitive weapons, so they're going for what they think are softer targets." The intelligence they'd gathered from captured raiders had revealed the Ascendancy's worldview. They saw themselves as the next step in evolution, beings who had transcended physical limitations through pure energy-based technology. The very existence of societies still using crude physical weapons offended them at an almost religious level. "Message from Admiral Zhang," Lieutenant Rivera announced. "All ships report ready. Hybrid systems are functioning at optimal levels." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. The next few hours would determine the future of not just the Alliance, but of technological development itself. The Ascendancy's philosophy of abandoning primitive technology in favor of pure energy-based systems had to be challenged, or the galaxy would lose something precious: the wisdom of balance. All ships, this is Captain Chen. She broadcast to the combined fleet. You know what we're facing. The Ascendancy thinks they're superior because they've pushed one type of technology to its limits. We're about to show them the power of diversity. She watched as the enemy fleet approached their position, still unaware of the trap they were sailing into. The Defiance's hybrid crew, humans and aliens working in perfect synchronization, maintained their disciplined silence. New energy readings from the Ascendancy fleet, the Rigelian tactical officer reported, their tentacles moving in patterns that indicated concern. They're charging something massive. The tactical display shifted, showing an enormous power buildup in the enemy formation. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the pattern. They're linking their ship's energy systems together, creating one massive quantum field. That's impossible, Jackson breathed. The power requirements alone. Not impossible, Sarah corrected. Just incredibly dangerous. They're so committed to their energy-only philosophy that they're willing to risk their entire fleet on one massive show of force. The enemy ships began to glow, their crystalline forms pulsing with barely contained power. The combined energy of hundreds of vessels poured into a single massive quantum field, creating a weapon that could theoretically vaporize an entire star system. They're not just trying to defeat us, Sarah realized. They're trying to prove their philosophy correct, to show that pure energy technology can overcome any physical defense. The Ascendancy fleet's formation shifted, preparing to unleash their combined power. That's when Sarah gave the order they'd been waiting for. All ships, execute attack pattern Chen 0. Show them what true advancement looks like. The gas giant's shadow erupted with activity as the combined fleet launched their assault. Ships that appeared to be standard Alliance vessels revealed their hybrid nature, opening fire with both energy weapons and massive rail guns. The first salvo of tungsten penetrators, fired from weapons the Ascendancy had dismissed as obsolete, smashed into their formation before they could redirect their massive energy buildup. Direct hits across their line, Jackson reported with fierce satisfaction. Their linked quantum field is destabilizing. That was the fatal flaw in the Ascendancy's approach. By linking their ships into one massive energy system, they created a single point of failure. Physical damage to any part of their formation cascaded through the whole, disrupting the delicate quantum harmonics they relied on. Second wave, launch missile swarms, Sarah ordered. Third wave, prepare to engage with energy weapons the moment their quantum field collapses. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. The Ascendancy fleet, caught between their own overwhelming but unstable energy weapon and the combined physical and energy attacks of the hybrid fleet, began to break apart. But even as victory seemed within reach, Sarah noticed something alarming on her tactical display. The destabilizing quantum field wasn't dissipating. It was collapsing in on itself. All ships, emergency maneuvers, she broadcast. Their field is going critical. The Ascendancy's mighty weapon, meant to demonstrate the superiority of pure energy technology, was about to become a demonstration of its greatest weakness. The collapsed quantum field exploded outward in a wave of pure energy that their own shields couldn't contain. Sarah watched in horror as dozens of Ascendancy ships were consumed by their own power, their beautiful crystalline forms shattering under forces they couldn't control. The hybrid fleet's layered defenses, energy shields backed by physical armor, allowed them to weather the blast, but the cost to their opponents was catastrophic. Ceasefire, she ordered as the energy wave dissipated. Prepare rescue operations. Look for survivors. As her crew moved to comply, Sarah stared at the tactical display showing the aftermath of the battle. The Ascendancy's mighty fleet lay in ruins, destroyed not by the Alliance's weapons, but by their own rigid adherence to a single path of technological development. Captain, Rivera called out, her voice tight with urgency. "We're picking up new quantum signatures, much larger than before." This wasn't their main fleet. Sarah's blood ran cold as she processed the implications. They'd won this battle, but the real test was still to come. The quantum ascendancy was about to learn a harsh lesson about the price of technological arrogance and the true meaning of advancement. The hologram of the Ascendancy Archdirector filled the Defiance's command center, its crystalline form radiating barely contained fury. Sarah stood before it, flanked by Admiral Zhang and representatives from every alliance race that had fought in the recent battle. "Your primitive weapons are an abomination." The Archdirector's translated voice resonated through the chamber. "You cannot halt the march of progress. Our main fleet approaches, 10 times the size of the force you just defeated. Surrender now, and we will guide your species toward true evolution." Sarah studied the being before her, noting how its crystalline form incorporated technology at the molecular level. The Ascendancy had literally rebuilt themselves in the image of their philosophy, beings of pure energy and quantum mechanics. "You still don't understand," she replied calmly. "We didn't win because our weapons were better. We won because we refused to abandon what worked just because something new came along. Your philosophy is fundamentally flawed," the Arctusian science minister added, his multiple eyes fixed on the hologram. "True evolution isn't about rejection of the past. It's about adaptation and integration." The Archdirector's form flickered with what might have been discussed. "You speak of evolution yet cling to projectile weapons and physical armor. Your hybrid abominations mock the purity of technological advancement." "Purity?" Sarah echoed, shaking her head. "That's your weakness. You've pushed your technology so far in one direction that you can't even see other possibilities anymore. You've trapped yourselves." "We have transcended physical limitations," the Archdirector declared. "Our beings merged seamlessly with pure energy. We are the future. Are you?" Sarah activated a display showing analysis of the rescued Ascendancy crews. "Your bodies are failing. The quantum integration is breaking down your molecular structure. Your pursuit of purity is killing you." The hologram flickered again, but this time Sarah caught something different in it. Fear. The Ascendancy's great secret was out. Their drive toward pure energy technology hadn't just been philosophical. It had been born of desperation. "Your main fleet," Admiral Zhang spoke up. "They're not coming to conquer us, are they? They're coming because they have to. Your civilization is dying." The Archdirector's next words came more slowly. "We cannot go backward. The integration process cannot be reversed. We must move forward. We must find a way to stabilize the quantum matrix. Your worlds, your resources, would be consumed trying to save your people," Sarah finished. "But it wouldn't work. You don't need more energy technology. You need balance." She nodded to the Rigelian elder, who activated another display. "We've been analyzing your quantum integration process. The solution isn't more power, it's the opposite. You need physical anchors, a way to ground the energy safely." "Impossible," the Archdirector declared, but there was uncertainty in its voice. "The same principles that make our hybrid ships work could save your people," the Arctusian minister explained. "Physical systems working in harmony with energy fields. Balance, stability." Sarah stepped forward. "You call it going backward. We call it remembering what works. Your fleet can continue on its current course, and we'll face them with everything we have. Or, the Archdirector's form had stabilized, attention fully focused. "Or you can accept that true evolution means being willing to change course when you're wrong. Work with us. Let us help you find balance again. Show the galaxy what real advancement looks like." The command center fell silent as the Archdirector's crystalline form pulsed with internal light. Sarah could almost see the war being waged within it. Centuries of doctrine against the undeniable evidence before it. Finally, the being spoke. "Your hybrid technology. You believe it could stabilize our quantum matrices. We can try," Sarah offered. "Together. not as teacher and student, but as equals, each bringing our own wisdom to the challenge. The Defiance's sensors reported that the Ascendancy's main fleet had dropped out of quantum space, but they remained at the system's edge, waiting. Perhaps, the Archdirector said slowly, evolution is more complex than we imagined. We accept your offer of collaboration. Hours later, Sarah stood on the Defiance's observation deck, watching as the first Ascendancy ships approached the Alliance shipyards. Their crystalline forms would soon be modified, integrated with physical systems that would give their energy-based technology the stability it had always lacked. Quite a victory, Admiral Zhang said, joining her at the window, though not the kind anyone expected. Sarah smiled. The best victories rarely are. They thought they had to choose between the past and the future. We showed them the truth. Real progress means building on your foundations, not abandoning them. She watched as human engineers worked alongside Alliance scientists and Ascendancy energy specialists, already beginning the process of integration. 3 different approaches to technology, each with its own wisdom, coming together to create something new. Think we've seen the last of the Raiders? Zhang asked. Probably not, Sarah admitted. The galaxy's a big place. There will always be someone who thinks they found the one true path to advancement. But maybe now we're better prepared to show them a different way. The Defiance's hybrid systems hummed softly around them, physical and energy technology working in perfect harmony. Outside, the stars stretched to infinity, full of possibilities waiting to be explored, not by choosing one path or another, but by finding the wisdom to walk them all. Evolution's true edge, Sarah reflected, wasn't in pushing forward blindly, but in remembering to bring the best of your past with you into the future. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not their weapons or their technology, but their stubborn insistence that progress didn't mean forgetting where you came from. It was a lesson worth fighting for, worth dying for, and, as they had shown today, worth living for.